Have you ever wondered what it's like moving to Jacksonville, Florida? Maybe you're curious as far as why people have moved here over the years. Well, in this video, I'm going to break down some of the main reasons why we see people moving here to Jacksonville, Florida right this minute without leaving anything back. Let's get into it right now. So for people that know me, they know that I absolutely love Jacksonville. I was born and raised here, and what I love about it is it's such a family-friendly city overall, and there's always things to do within the city, but you're also not too far away from major cities like Atlanta or Orlando or Miami, to where, again, if you want that big city life, you can still get it without paying for that big city pricing, and you just visit those cities from time to time to get that feel. At the same time, that's also sometimes why people who are born and raised here want to leave, is because they do want that big city feel every day, which is fine. Everyone has different preferences, but I will tell you that a lot of people tend to move here for reasons that we're going to outline in this video, which is starting off with the fact that pricing here and that cost of living makes Jacksonville a much more affordable city compared to other major cities in the state of Florida or the southeast United States. So again, if you're looking for a major city to live in, one that is going to give you a lot of potential as far as job opportunities and housing, Jacksonville does tend to rank as a much more affordable option compared to cities like Tampa or Orlando or Miami, within the state. So that becomes a big piece of the equation when it comes to moving here to Jacksonville. Now, if you want to know, really, why not to move here, I do a video on that as well. You can find that on our channel. And again, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that way you get notified when we post more videos just like this one. And make sure you hit the like on this video, as that does help us build up our channel and provide more great content for you as a viewer. Now, the next topic we're going to go over as far as why people move to Jacksonville actually has to do with something that is very specific to only a couple states in the United States. And that is that there is no state income tax here in Florida, and in that case, Jacksonville, Florida. So that state income tax does become a big deal, and you see it a lot actually, not necessarily in Jacksonville, but you see a lot of it more so in Nassau County, which is to the north. Again, it's gonna be your Yulee, your Fernandina Beach, your Amelia Island areas. And a lot of people will actually, when they're working on Kings Bay, on the base over there, so military related, they will actually choose to live in Fernandina, Yulee area, because of the fact that there's no state income tax there, and it's still only gonna put you about 30 to 45 minutes away from Kings Bay. So that just kind of gives you an example of just how desirable not having that state income tax is when it comes to living in Florida versus maybe some other states like Georgia. From there, the next topic to focus on is the job opportunities and job growth you can have here in Jacksonville. Sometimes, people don't always realize just how much we have going on here. Whether if it's healthcare, where we are constantly building new hospitals left and right to be able to provide more opportunities for residents. So again, whether if you are looking at Mayo, UF Health, Baptist, just to name a few, there's a lot of opportunities there. And we do see people constantly moving here for those job opportunities. I actually have worked with different people in the healthcare field who specifically chose Jacksonville due to those opportunities on the healthcare side. Now, again, the location did make another piece of the equation for them, but really it was that job opportunity that brought them here. Another job opportunity that tends to bring people to Jacksonville is our military presence. Jacksonville is very unique in the fact that we have two Navy bases located within, Jacksonville, Florida. We have Mayport, which is going to be out towards the coast, and we have NAS Jax, which is going to be more inshore along the St. Johns River, closer to downtown. And that brings a lot of military families to the area. It also means that, a lot of them will move as well, because that is the typical nature of being in the military. But we do see that bring a lot of new faces to Jacksonville on a day-to-day basis. In addition, we also do have a very strong finance presence here in Jacksonville, Florida. We have major banks located here, whether if it's Bank of America, Fidelity, Deutsche Bank, just to name a handful. There's plenty more. And so that does provide a lot of higher paying professional opportunities for individuals as well in those fields. So overall, with those items, you think, oh, okay, that's still good, but what else? Well, another thing that we do have here is we have a very diverse logistics side of things when it comes to different options there, due to the fact that we are also a port city. Having the Jacksonville port here does bring a lot of influx of ships, does bring a lot of logistics jobs with it. And the city is constantly looking to improve on it too by deepening the St. Johns River to allow larger transport ships to be able to bring more to our port, which again, then leads to more job opportunities as well. So that becomes a big piece of the equation, especially when you tie that in with the cost of living and how affordable Jacksonville is. So again, it gives you that ability to get a great job, be able to get a really great house with great size and good finishes with newer construction. And again, without having that state income tax, they all kind of play together to give you a really good situation to kind of go into. And from there, the next topic we're going to spend a couple minutes on is something that's a little different in the sense of the last that we went over. And it's different in the sense that it's more about your lifestyle and less about the dollars and the cents. Ultimately, what I love about Jacksonville is it's a city that you feel like you can live in, not necessarily a city that you feel like you're visiting. And I feel like a lot of times when you're talking about major cities in Florida, whether if it's Miami, if it's Tampa, or if it's Orlando, a lot of times you get that touristy feel, especially with Orlando and Miami, due to the nature of how those cities were constructed and really what their focus on is as a major city. So that's a big piece of the equation is you don't get that tourism, so to speak, in Jacksonville that you do see in those other major cities. Now, it's not to say we don't get tourism, we do, and especially during the holidays, you'll see a lot more in St. Augustine, or you may see it more in Amelia Island, to the north, St. Augustine to the south. But in general, it definitely, I think, plays a role into why I feel like it's a very family-friendly city, because of the fact that we don't get that tourism, so to speak, that you see in other parts of the state. In addition, the lifestyle you get here, it's very unique in that you get a little bit of everything. If you want to have a little more country living, west side of Jacksonville kind of gives you that. If you want to have more of that beach lifestyle, well, the beaches gives you that as well. And again, if you just want to be able to be out in nature, we have a diverse park system and tons of different waterways to be able to explore and experience. So whether if you're an avid boater or a fisherman, you have a lot of opportunities there as well. I can tell you for me personally, I grew up fishing along the Atlantic coast over here in Jacksonville, and I've done inshore fishing, I've done offshore fishing, I've fished for bass on the St. Johns River all the way out to grouper and snapper and tuna and wahoo out offshore where you can't see land for miles. And I can tell you that it's really a unique and diverse ecosystem in the sense of having that St. Johns River tying into the Atlantic Ocean. So we may not always get the pretty water that you see down south or out west of Florida, west coast, along the Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico, however you want to call it. But we do still get some really great fishing over here as well. So that becomes a big piece of the equation when it comes to living here, is the fact that when you move to and live in Jacksonville, you do get a little bit of all of that. And again, if you have any questions as we're going through this video, do not hesitate to call me, text me, email me. It's going to be on the screen. Because again, I want to answer those questions for you. And again, if you just want to call and just say how much you like this video, obviously feel free to do that as well. We're always happy to take anything and everything. So overall though, lifestyle plays a huge piece of the equation as far as why people move here. Now here's one that you may not always think about, but it does play a role in why people do sometimes move to Jacksonville. And that's going to be the neighborhood variety. Some cities you move to, especially if they're newer cities, a lot of the construction, a lot of the looks of the homes are going to be fairly similar. We talk about it all the time in real estate, and I'm sure a lot of people always talk about it all the time as well, even if you're not in real estate. But at the end of the day, people don't always, that's not saying all of them, but some people don't always want that cookie cutter feel, cookie cutter neighborhood, suburban living that has become really much the norm in a lot of these major southern cities in Florida and other parts of the US. And so that's the cool part about Jacksonville is, yes, we have that. If you want that suburban living, if you want a brand new construction home, and be able to control that price a little bit because of it and not have to have a lot of upkeep, we have that. We have Rivertown, we have E-Town, we have Seven Pines, we have Nocatee, Silverleaf, Jillington Creek Plantation, Aberdeen, Durban Crossing. I mean, it goes on and on and on. But if you prefer something a little bit older, something that has a little more character, maybe a little more charm in your eyes, we have that as well. We do have older areas of Jacksonville, whether if it's the San Marco, the San Jose. I'll get back to San Marco in a second, but San Jose, the Mandarins, the Arlington, so to speak. We do have areas that can give you a little bit of an older house, a little bit more land, maybe a little bit more curb appeal in your eyes. It's kind of that middle ground where it's not brand new construction, it's not 100 years old either, but definitely does give you that middle ground to be able to have some diversity in your neighborhood from the standpoint of you're not looking at your house across the street and then looking down the street and seeing 4 houses down. It's the same exact look of the front. A lot of times with those newer construction neighborhoods, that's what happens. Me personally, I have a 1960s house. It's an all brick house, has tons of character, tons of charm, does have a lot more upkeep than probably new construction does. But that was a big piece I was looking for, was having a little bit more of that individualism, is maybe the better word to put, for the homes. But also, if you just want to be able to walk to things more often, maybe not every day or all the time, but to have that ability to walk or bike to restaurants and shops and whatnot, and you prefer those old homes, 100-plus-year-old, historic homes. We have that with, as I had previously mentioned, San Marco, or Riverside and Avondale as well will give you that. Even Springfield downtown will give you that. And again, some of these areas I'm discussing, we have some amazing videos going over more of a deeper dive into these areas. So all you have to do is go to our channel to check those out as well. But again, those are going to give you your more historic looking homes. They're going to have tons of individualism with them. They're really going to stand out from each other. But things to keep in mind, insurance is going to be more expensive than new construction, and your upkeep of it's probably more expensive as well to keep it in its pristine condition that it may already be in when you buy it. But again, that's the cool part. You get variety here in Jacksonville. So no matter what you're looking for, we have that when it comes to a neighborhood that fits what you and your family are looking for. And now that we have finished talking about neighborhoods, what sometimes dictates also what neighborhood you want to focus on. And what I mean by that is, okay, I love this neighborhood, but I have kids. What does that mean? That might mean that, even though you may love the neighborhood, you're still going to look at, what schools they're zoned for to ensure that they're schools that you want to send your kid to. It's fully understandable. Me personally, I grew up in Duval County. I grew up in the Duval County public school system. But to be honest, people don't always have a great opinion of the Duval County school system, and that's okay. At the end of the day, it all comes down to figuring out, what makes the most sense for you and your family. And I always tell people that if you ever want to know more about a school or, where a house is zoned for the schools, what kind of schools they are, go to greatschools.org. There's other websites you can go to as well, but greatschools.org starts to be able to paint that picture to you on just how good of a school it may be. And a lot of times you can kind of see more of a detailed breakdown of just why they got the ratings they got and really what maybe their focus on is as a school. I can tell you that when I went to high school, I went to Atlantic Coast High School, and a big focus for why I went there was that they had a very great advanced placement course or pathway for students to take if they so chose that allowed me to walk into college when I went to Florida State University with 32 college credits. And also mixed in there was the ability to take a couple dual enrollment classes, which also did not hurt from a college standpoint. So that's my story. Obviously, everyone has their own story, but what I can tell you is a lot of times why people move to Jacksonville, Florida isn't necessarily to be in what's considered truly the greater Jacksonville area. They may work there, but they may actually move to Nassau County to the north. Sounds familiar. We have talked about it once before. May move to St. Johns County to the south or Clay County to the west. Now, the reason for this is due to the schools. In general, on a school-to-school basis, whether if it's Nassau, Clay, or St. Johns County, they do tend to be more highly rated on sites like great schools than Duval County. So it does play a big piece into it when people are choosing on where exactly to live in Jacksonville, Florida, or more the Northeast Florida as a whole. In addition, there are also a lot of different opportunities for sports here in Jacksonville. So sports will also dictate a lot of things too, because there's a lot of different football, soccer, basketball, baseball opportunities, and sometimes location will play a big factor in that, depending on which league they want their kids to be in, or which league their kids want to be in. So a lot of that does play a big role when it comes to living and moving here to Jacksonville. In addition, another thing that does tend to come up as far as why people choose to move here is the weather. Now, the weather can be a downside at times, and again, we have referenced that on previous videos, but the weather also can be a very big positive for people when choosing on where to live. I have people right this moment who are moving to Jacksonville, Florida, or more so just the area as a whole, because of the weather. They live up north and they are older and they are looking to retire to an area where it's not going to be, below freezing during the year. If it is, it's very minimal, and definitely not, well below freezing into the, negatives. So that was a big reason as far as why they chose this area over other areas in the US. That is another piece of it as well. You're not having to worry about the freezing cold temperatures. You really don't have to worry too much about fires like you see on the West Coast, because we do tend to get enough rain to kind of keep that from happening. And you don't have to worry too much about tornadoes as well, even though we do get them from time to time. I believe I think there was a stat out there at one point, Florida actually gets the most tornadoes out of any state in the US, but the tornadoes we get here are very minimal in nature and almost very rarely create any sort of damage. So not what you see in the Midwest, where it is very flat and a lot of hurricane alley, so to speak. So weather is a big piece that also draws people in, and we also don't get as hot as down south. So even though we do stay away from most of those really cold temperatures, we also don't get into the extremely hot temperatures you sometimes see in Miami during that summertime. So kind of a win-win across the board if you ask me, but as you know, I am a little bit biased as well. Now to wrap things up, we do have one more item that I want to discuss as far as why we see people move here, and that is the fact that we have much less congestion than you see in other major cities in our area and really in the US as a whole. Now, that's not to say that we don't get traffic, because we do, and the city is constantly working on improving the roadways, maybe not as fast as we like. If you're a resident of Jacksonville, you know what I'm talking about. But ultimately, it is one of those things that they are working to improve on. And also, if you're not a resident of Jacksonville and you want to know what I'm referencing, give me a call, text, and email, and I'll go over all that as well. But overall, the congestion here, because we're such a wide and spread out city, does not normally get to be too cumbersome for most residents. So again, will there be some traffic? Will there be some congestion at times? There will, but not like what you see in other cities in Florida, like Miami, Tampa, or Orlando. And you're not dealing with I-10, traffic. You're not dealing with I-75 traffic, or again, Miami downtown traffic. So that does make a huge difference. In addition to that, the cool thing about Jacksonville is, yes, we have been put on the map over the last couple of years. COVID kind of did that. We are sometimes thought of on the same capacity as a Tampa or Orlando or Miami in some regards. So we do get some recognition there, but it still is in some regards an up and coming area. One cool aspect about Jacksonville is we still do have a lot of open land that is accessible to people. And that it creates a situation where as that land gets sold and more development occurs, there will be more neighborhoods popping up. There will be more opportunities for families in the Jacksonville area to prosper, in my opinion. One of those neighborhoods that's actually coming close to being started, and I say neighborhoods, it's more of a master plan community, is actually the Ever Range community. That's going to be the next big hit community here in Jacksonville. And if you want to know more about it, again, reach out to me. But with it, it is being developed in one of those pockets where there has been a lot of just vacant land over the years. And the group who owns it, the Park Group, is they are the ones developing it. And it's going to be the next big community as far as what's anticipated. You're going to have multiple builders, and it's going to have, it's going to be in some good school zones as well, and still will be in that Duval County area. So that's the thing about this is if you're watching this video and you live here currently or you don't live here currently, but you feel like maybe you missed out, well, I'm here to tell you that you didn't miss out. There still is opportunity here in Jacksonville as we move into our future years. And at the end of the day, if you're looking for somewhere where you can feel like you're at home, where you have a mixture of landscapes to kind of choose from, mixture of different things you can do as a family or again on your own, Jacksonville gives you that. And again, if you want to know more about why I love Jacksonville, reach out to me. I'm always happy to help answer any and all questions and even give you more of a background on just why I like Jacksonville the way I do and why I chose Jacksonville to be the city that I raised my family in as I do get older. So again, that's a little bit of a background as far as why people are moving to Jacksonville. If you've stayed till the end, again, like this video, subscribe to our channel, ring the bell if you want to get notified when we post more content like this, because we will be. And I'll see you guys again on our next video.